So let's skip forward a little bit because that's how that went down. And this is their strategy. Again, a different strategy from EnVyUs coming out on City Center. And you can see now that they're a team that doesn't want to play the meta. They want to play to the strengths of their team and craft strategies around that, which I like. You know, that's a really good plan for the team overall. It shows that they put a lot of thought into how they're playing it. So they've got Taimu, again, on a hero that really excels for him. And it's not his meta, so you know you really have to put a little bit of effort into finding heroes that do excel for him in this meta. Although, gotta say that he's really come on with the Soldier 76. He used to be a bit of a weak point for them on the Soldier 76, and now he's a really good one. Or he's a very... I don't know, what's less than really good, but better than good? Pretty good. Is pretty good actually less than good? Don't know. So the idea of this composition obviously is that Taimu's going to do the damage to people and potentially get really nice headshots onto a lot of squishy targets. And if he just manages to do damage rather than actually get kills, then Effect and Coco can chase down those kills and actually, chase down the damage and convert them into kills. But it's a very kind of passive style here because they're using Taimu as a little bit of bait and trying to kill players that go onto him as well. Which means that their positioning is really far back because he needs the sight lines and he also has to be in a safe position in case he gets jumped on. And so Taimu here, miles away, and as the point unlocks, they basically... I mean, they lost both of the supports really early on as well. But they still win the fight overall because they managed to get the picks onto both of these tanks that come forwards. Taimu does a load of damage to them. Effect, Coco managed to chase the kills. And they get the picks. But because they're playing such a passive composition, the point flips over to Kongdu Panthera. So effectively, I mean, Kongdu Panthera, this is all one fight for the first minute. The entire minute of City Center is one fight that Panthera lose, but they end up ticking it up to, what are they on? They're on about 20% before they've fully lost the fight as well. With this engage here, where Taimu and Coco manage to pick off Lucky, and then Waka Waka falls, and then Rascal dies as well. At this point, you know, they should flip it around now. If they can get the kills here and finish up people, they should flip it around 25-30%. But instead, Kongdu Panthera are really good at being able to delay for ages. So this doesn't get flipped until 50%. It's madness. It's so well executed coming out from Kongdu Panthera. They just recognize exactly what their advantage is in this situation. The fact that they've got the fight in City Center itself is so difficult to be able to flip in these situations. Especially with a composition that is kind of relying on one guy getting most of the damage off. They don't have too much damage coming out from Taimu consistently over a longer period of time. And these heroes that are just jumping around all over the place are really difficult for them to actually kill. So if Void actually came in here as well, which he was intending to, they would have been able to keep it going for even longer. But eventually they managed to flip it at 53% after Coco kind of gets in his face and body blocks him off the point. So it's like a fight that probably should have got Kongdu Panthera about 25-30% and ended up getting them 53%. So they really pushed that one as far as they possibly could. So already EnVyUs are kind of on the back foot, despite the fact that they had a good plan and executed it pretty much as well as they could have done. And then they played this forwards defense super well as well. So I was, at this point in the series, you know, I'm super impressed with what I've seen from EnVyUs. They're actually playing really well. They've got some strategies that work really well around the styles and strengths of their team. They're executing well. They're matching Panthera blow for blow. Apart from on the first round of Oasis on Garden, pretty much. And EnVyUs in this defense have got... Oh, wait. I should cycle it back a little bit, actually, because... when they actually flip control of the point here, when they're playing aggressively into the spawn area, which they managed to do for about another minute, say, you know, the threat of the sniper is making Panthera a bit having to watch where they come from and not really put themselves in just any old position. They can't get an easy engage. There's a lot of pressure on them. And just the fact that they're holding close in the choke points and keeping everybody alive. And then Mickey throws in this awesome self-destruct there that just goes behind everybody. And it's such an open area, that spawn area, and he's timed it perfectly so that was just as Waka Waka and the rest of Panthera were coming through kind of this doorway area. That this self-destruct actually catches Waka Waka and forces Luffy's Transcendence, which is just perfect. I mean, you couldn't ask for any more out of your out of your self-destruct. So this is a disaster for Kung Fu Panthera. They've lost one support ultimate in the fight, and they've wasted another in a fight that they're definitely going to lose. So this is a horrible situation for them. And EnVyUs know that they can commit this sound barrier to the fight, because obviously Luffy wasted his, so they're just matching them defensive support ult for defensive support ult, just to make sure that nobody dies as well, because EnVyUs need to keep everyone alive to keep this strat running. You know, as soon as they lose one player, a lot of the pressure is taken off. They need everybody alive to be able to keep this kind of aggressive defense up, which is what their composition works best doing. So again, when Coco gets stuck here, he uses his Primal Rage just to make sure that he stays alive, and then goes in and does a bit more damage and pressure over to the rest of the players on Kung Fu Panthera, just playing a bit more aggressively, again, shaking them up, making sure that they never feel safe. But he's basically using his ult there to stay alive, because they want everybody to carry on staying forwards. And then this was, again, what I was really impressed with here, because they know that they have support ults active, and they're going to be at, what, like 60-70% when Waka Waka's in a position where they want to engage. So they know that there's this Dragon Blade, Sound Barrier, Primal Rage up, which is a really great combo for Panthera to use. And they've got the support ult to try and counteract it, but their composition in general isn't that great if they just take a direct ultimate v ultimate fight. So instead, EnVyUs just disengage. When you see Waka Waka's Sound Barrier coming in here, you'll see EnVyUs just kind of flee. They use Taimu, and they just kind of make him run off into... So here it comes. Here's the engage coming out of Panthera. They speed boost forwards. They drop the Sound Barrier. Mickey's in a forward position. So is Taimu. Taimu runs off to the side, like buying time for the rest of his team to get out, for Chips and Harry Hook and everybody to be able to get out. So he's a bit of the distraction in this situation. They extend the fight for a little bit and force the blade out. And, you know, that's not too bad for them. That's not too bad for EnVyUs, because they've managed to waste the support, or not waste, but they've managed to get the support ult and the Primal Rage and the Dragon Blade coming out from Kung Fu Panthera. They managed to disengage and tick themselves up to 82%. I think they were hoping for something a little longer. I think they were hoping to take themselves up into the 90s, but it doesn't make that much difference on this point. And they have both support ults essentially up for the next fight, because Harry Hook, once they engage, Chips uses his Transcendence, and then the pressure's on Harry. By that time, he should probably have this this Sound Barrier alive. And Luffy's also going to have his. So they know they're in like a 2-for-1 situation, and it's actually looking good for them to be able to recap. Like, EnVyUs are still kind of in control here, even though they're not in control of the point. They're actually in a good position in terms of the round. But their engage as they come through here is equal parts unfortunate and perhaps badly set up. No, I don't think it's even equal parts. It's really unfortunate, actually. And there's only a little bit of badly set up. So you see here, let me see when they switch over to this other camera angle. Okay, so here's the other camera angle. You can see here that supports and Birdring are up here. Their tanks are down there. And then Rascal's floating somewhere around here on the left as well, I think. But EnVyUs, all they have to do in this situation, in my opinion, is set up somewhere nice and defensive, where they know that Kung Fu Panthera is a really aggressive team. They're going to try and engage into them to try and force a support ult out of Chip's Iron. So if they take a passive position, say, on this side of the point, or take a passive position, like, if they go through to the point and try and get it so that they can, like, play around the sides, instead of making themselves stuck in this kind of choke where they only have 2 small choke points behind them, and there's not really anywhere to spread out. So if you actually get engaged on there, you're kind of penned in. There's lots of walls around you. So it's not a great defensive position, in my opinion. Whereas if you move around here and you're playing in this archway, that any player that aggresses into you is in an archway, and you can kind of fan around the sides to spread yourselves out. And if you're playing around the point, like, you can either play one side of the point, or you can just kind of rotate around it to rotate away from people. So I feel like this would have been a better decision from EnVyUs if they'd set themselves up a bit more defensively before they actually decided to take the fight proper, because they've got a lot of time to do it as well. They're only at 70% here, Kung Fu Panthera. And instead, EnVyUs really decide to go take the initiative, is how I would describe it. And basically, Coco uses his jump really early on to try and pressure these supports, and basically they get counter dived and completely fucked. So they don't really have the best defensive position. Coco dives top at the same time as Fisher dives, so it's not even really a counter dive. I don't think Fisher was like waiting for Coco to dive. I think they always intended Conde Panthera to initiate there, and Coco just happened to do it at the same time. And you see that Waka Waka gets like this boop on him. I don't know whether you call it that, but see. So again, Waka Waka is like boops him away, so he doesn't even get the disrupt on the supports, and he's not even putting pressure on them and tying them up and making sure they can't help in the fight, because otherwise that would have been great. You know, if you trade Coco for tying up both of their supports, you're probably in a great position in this fight, especially because Luffy's probably going to have to zoom Yata away or something and waste half of his, or not half, but be in a worse position anyway, let's put it like that. But instead, Coco gets up, he gets booped away. He doesn't have the jump to kind of jump back defensively and help the rest of his team and try and relieve the pressure from some of these tanks. And the second mistake that I think EnVyUs make is this, what I think is a pretty weak pop from Chips Iron, especially when he's getting the peel onto him. So he's getting this defense matrix onto Chips. So the only guy that can really damage him is Fisher. And he pops like now. Like, he's on full health. His team haven't taken damage. He just sees that the aggression's coming in and he instantly pops. I think that's a little bit weak, especially when you know that Harry has to build up for his sound barrier and that was so early on. I don't know. To me, that feels a bit weak because the only guy actually pressuring him is like Fisher's jumped in, Birdring's come around the side, but he's getting defense matrix, and Harry Hook's there. And they can, and I think Taimu's around there as well, so they can like try and deal a bit of damage over to Fisher before they actually pop. But instead, Chips pops it off. Because everybody on his team is safe in the Transcendence, Mickey then goes on the aggressive and tries to pressure down Rascal and make sure that he's like taking a lot of damage and has to play more defensively in the second half of the fight. You know, once the support ults are traded out. But Effect tries to pop off his pulse bomb there and gets eaten by the Matrix, and the other pulse bomb coming from Birdring is ridiculous. Birdring here puts his pulse bomb onto the Transcendence, the Transcending Chips Iron, and it sticks to Chips. I don't know whether you could quite see it there, but it sticks to Chips as he's just kind of floating around like, and manages to catch both Harry and Taimu there. So both Harry and Taimu die because they were too close to Chips, who is obviously immortal when he's inside the Iris. And that is a disaster. There's no recovery from that. Because Luffy hasn't even... like the fact that they popped that so early before they'd even put pressure on Fisher or Rascal, or even Void in that situation, means that Luffy could hold on to his trance for way longer. And they basically have lost this fight like before it started, because Harry Hook's the guy that they were relying on. The way that this game plan I think was supposed to go down for EnVyUs was they engage, Coco ties up some of their supports for a little while, the counter gauge comes in from Fisher and Void, they pop off the Transcendence as Coco jumps back into them defensively. Then Mickey does a bit of damage while the Transcendence going on. He turns around to Matrix people as the Transcendence comes off, and they reposition whilst they're inside the Matrix. Then Harry Hook, by that time, has been like prioritizing doing damage to build up his sound barrier, and he's able to sound barrier, and then with the sound barrier, they are able to win the fight because they're able to actually like reduce their damage, reposition, and do damage to the enemy team while Waka Waka doesn't have his life. So I think that was their game plan going into it. Like everybody's like rough roll, and this just completely fucks them up because Harry Hook's been denied his game-changing ultimate in this fight, and Taimu's kind of the main source of damage along with Effect. So they just got wrecked like by one pulse bomb towards the end there, even when I felt in general they'd kind of played the rest of the macro game quite well on City Center, you know, with a style that kind of fit them.